So there we go. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the 4 o'clock session today. I am pleased to be joined by Ryan Kawamoto and Robert Pennybacker. And I would like to introduce, let me read you a little bit about Ryan. The topic, by the way, today, the session title is How to Shoot a Sequence. And let me give you a little background on Ryan that I have here. Ryan Kawamoto is an award-winning television and film director with a flair for storytelling. He's directed numerous advertising campaigns, such as multi-year TV campaigns featuring Marcus Mariota for Island Insurance and clients such as Central Pacific Bank, Kaiser Permanente, and Hawaiian Telecom. Ryan was honored as the 2012 American Advertising Federation Hawaii Advertising Man of the Year. He also directed several feature films, including Hang Loose, an Asian American comedy, and the documentary films The Untold Story, Internment of Japanese Americans in Hawaii, and Voices Behind Barbed Wire, which received an Achievement in Interpretive Award in 2020 from the Hawaii Historic Foundation. So we welcome Ryan, and I'll let Ryan introduce Robert, and I will turn it over to you guys.
Right. Aloha from Hawaii. I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. But first, I would like to introduce Robert Pennybacker, who is the creator, the executive producer, also vice president of learning initiatives at PBS Hawaii. And he's going to give you a brief overview of Hikino, which is Hawaii's and I guess one of the nation's first student news shows on PBS Hawaii. So I'll turn it over to Robert.
Thanks, Ryan. The presentation is brought to you by PBS Hawaii's Hikino, and we believe when we started, we were the nation's first statewide student news network. Students like yourselves produce news stories, and we collect them together into half-hour episodes and air them prime time on the PBS station in Hawaii every Thursday night. And we're getting close to our 10th anniversary. We've been on the air for 10 years. And Ryan has a very important role. He's one of our mentors. And one of the unique things about our program is that the students and the teachers, as they're working on their stories, are being mentored by industry professionals such as Ryan. And so Ryan is one of our very illustrious mentors. And one of the things that we noticed as Hikino has progressed is the need for being conscious of building sequences. When you're telling a story, whether it's a news story or even a commercial or even a fictional film or documentary, I think too many times the visuals, sometimes called B-roll, are just thought of as secondary. Well, let's just get some B-roll. Let's just shoot kind of what the person is talking about, and that'll be fine. And sometimes that is fine, but if you can build a really compelling sequence that draws the audience in from the visual side, it just makes your story that much stronger. And so that's really what Ryan's going to talk to you about today. So with that, I turn it back to Ryan.
All right. Thank you very much, Robert. Allow me to share my screen today. And one of the ground rules for today's session is anytime that you have a question, feel free to go ahead and put it into the chat so that we can answer it in a timely fashion instead of it all piling up on the back end. I'd like to kind of go and kind of keep it free flowing and answer any questions you have throughout, especially if I'm going a little too fast, as this will be sort of a condensed session today for the time that we have. Let me share my screen very quickly. Share. Okay, so we are screen sharing now. So everybody should be able to see my title slide. That is me, Ryan Kawamoto. A little bit about myself. I am a television director here in Honolulu, Hawaii. I work on commercials, films, and documentaries, and I'm with a company called Kinetic Productions. These are some screenshots for some recent productions that I've done. I get to work with local boy Marcus Mariota, who is an NFL quarterback, and we do a lot of advertising here in Hawaii. So These are a few screenshots from a few recent commercials that I've done with Marcus. And yes, he is pretty tall. I'm average height. He's just really tall. So, okay. A few screenshots here from some of the documentary project that I've done. This is some reenactments that I did for World War II reenactment type scene. Really quick thing about myself before I go on and talk about sequences. I actually got into video production when I was in high school. I took a video production class when I was a senior in my high school. I'm from Hawaii Island in Hilo, Hawaii, and I had learned that I really love storytelling and I really love video. And so I pursued it in college and pursued it as a professional career. So I just wanted to share that if you're really into it and really interested in storytelling, I'm glad you guys are all here at STN, and this really may be something for you as well, because I certainly started as a student and here I am 20 something plus years later working in the business as a director. So, okay, so going on. Okay, so a sequence. We're going to learn how to shoot a sequence. Now, we constructed this specifically for our Hikino students and for our teachers, so that they could have a tool to better prepare, plan, and film and edit together their sequences. So let's break it down. What is a sequence? Okay, now remember that a sequence is used to tell a visual story. In other words, it's not just, hey, let's get a camera angle here and a cool camera angle there, and let's randomly put something there. It's actually about putting shots together to help tell that story. So it's not filler. It's not just stuff to put into so that you don't have to do so you can do voiceovers all the time. It's actual images that can be used to help tell your story. So remember that. Now, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to play a story from Hikino. This was done by the students at H.P. Baldwin High School on Maui. And it's a part of a story called Riley Cuban. And I would like you to watch it and see if you can analyze what shots were used to kind of help tell the story. And we'll kind of go through it afterwards as well. Okay? And I just really want you to look at how it enriches the story.
Riley was then inspired to use makeup as a coping mechanism.
Seeing that my mom would wear it just to seem presentable, I thought that I could do the same thing. But then I started to become obsessed with a different picture. I absolutely hated myself. I really wanted to die.
However, an encounter in 2016 made all the difference.
There was the one incident where a girl walked up to me and she's like, "You're wearing a lot of makeup." I took it all off and I was like, okay, I'm gonna face my biggest fear today, walk out there with a bare face and just be me. It just took a while for me because I didn't know how to accept myself because I based myself off of other people's opinions.
Riley continues to wear makeup, but with a renewed perspective.
I feel like I can wear makeup just because I want to look better. Like, let's be real. Like, you see this face? Like, it's great. It's glowing. I don't have to impress anyone else but myself. You're not going to change who you are simply by putting on this mask. Go out there and just live a little.
Comfortable in her own skin, Riley is finally both confident and happy. This is Caitlin Izumigawa from H.P. Baldwin High School for Hikino.
Okay, so that was unfortunately not the whole story. For time, I couldn't show you all of it, but I did show you a good chunk of it, and just to kind of get you into what is a good sequence. And that particular piece, or those clips from that piece, had many good sequences. What is a good sequence? A series of shots that will visually help tell that story. It helps viewers understand relationships within a scene. It definitely will enrich the story. You definitely want to engage the audience with your sequence. Okay. Now, good sequences start with good B-roll. You want to give your editors options and not just one way to edit the scene. For example, I'm not sure, maybe when some of you were starting out, or if you have this problem when you're putting together your stories, but let's say you're filming a scene and you film a wide shot and maybe one other wide shot. Now, trying to edit those two wide shots together within the context of one scene sometimes can be very, very challenging. Okay, so that's just one example of maybe what not to do. You want to always give your editor options, and definitely it should not be used as filler. A lot of times when I see student stories, many of the stories do take place on campus, yes, but I often see things where the editor or the producer will just throw in a campus shot, which doesn't really tie into the story, and it's just randomly placed in the middle of a story, which is called filler. So you definitely want your shots to have a relationship and help build that story. So one good thing, one best practice that I always try to instruct the students to do and give them advice to do is when you're covering a scene, and it can be a very, very simple scene, and we're going to go through one or two of them. You want to cover the scene, the same action, generally with a minimum of 5 camera angles. Okay, so that's generally a really good rule, 5 camera angles. Okay, and what are maybe some of those 5 camera angles? Well, let's take a look at some of those 5 basic shots, and there will be a couple more in here for variety's sake. So I'm going to play you a story called Baking Up Confidence, or it's actually clips from Baking Up Confidence. And this was done on Oahu by the students of Honganji Mission School. So I'll play a clip from that as well.
I went in my room and I typed up the entire application by myself, and I just sent my application in. So I kind of just did it on my own.
Before the competition, she didn't know what to expect and had some fears.
Once you put something in the oven, it's not like you can pick out the eggs or the milk when it's done baking. I mean, when it's done, it's done. You just have to start over. And that honestly was the most nerve-wracking part.
During the show's first challenge, Taylor learned a valuable lesson in spite of her fears and concerns.
Okay. Now we're going to identify some of the shots used in the sequence. And one of the things today that I wanted to do and throughout this presentation is show you real practical things that students have done. So these are all student-produced stories from Hiki no. Okay, so this first one here, of course, it's a wide shot or establishing shot. So you can see here, you can see the whole context of the room. You can see that our young baker here has her special pan on top of the stove, and she's whisking. So it sort of sets up what's going on within the scene. You can see a little bit of everything. Okay. So this one here, which was used in the context of that sequence, is a medium shot. We've gone in a little closer now, and we can see a little bit more detail on what's going on. And you can see in this particular part of the scene, she is starting to pull the icing out of the bowl and is about to put it on the cake. Okay. And here we have a close-up, pretty self-explanatory there, close-up of her frosting the cake. And then we go an even closer to an extreme close-up here. And this is generally used when you have a type of shot that you really want to show the fine details of. This is another one. It's an alternate or unusual angle. Sometimes that's good to include when shooting a sequence where maybe you want to film something a little different from what you've been seeing before. And this is a reversed angle close-up, so you can see into the bowl. Okay, so those are just some examples of shots that were used in that particular baking sequence, just to give you a real basic idea of what was used for it. Now, I'm going to play you this particular piece. This is from the island of Lanai, and it's about planting pineapple. Little bit of context. on that particular island here in Hawaii, that island was known for growing pineapple for years and years and years. So I think the students there wanted to do something to kind of honor their heritage and history of growing pineapples. But what I'd like you to do, once we sort of get past the historical section of historical photos, is see if you can identify the various types of shots used to create the sequencing here in this particular piece. And then afterwards, we're going to go through and we'll go through and point them out. But watch it and see if you can just break it down into all the different types of shots that were used for this particular piece. Okay.
The Lanai plantation was once the world's largest single producer of pineapple. Pineapple planters quickly created a hole, planted each crown by hand. Often they planted 10,000 pineapples a day. Though pineapple production ended in 1992, it is still a big part of Lanai's living heritage. Today, you will learn how to plant a pineapple. First, find a pineapple and twist the crown off. Let it dry for 4 days. Pull the weeds and clear the land. After that, grab a shovel and dig a hole about 1 foot deep and 1 foot wide. Put some compost and manure into the hole. These will nourish the pineapple without chemicals or pesticides. Pull its bottom leaves off to expose the rootstock. Then use your trowel to dig a small hole and place the crown in. After planting, you'll have to water it. It will need daily watering in the first few weeks. About 18 months later, you can enjoy the sweet and juicy pineapple you planted yourself. This is Jonah Chu from Lanai High and Elementary School, reporting for Hikino.
Okay. Oh, and before we go on to show you what shots that we did, I see there's something in the Q&A. Let me see if I can open that up. Generally, would an alternate angle make a good transition shot? Great question. That depends on how it is used as a transition shot. Let's see. Transition shot between one scene to another, or within the same sort of scene, I guess. See if that person can. But yes, it could be. It depends on the context of how it's used, though. So yeah, if you want to respond to that. Okay, as we're moving on. Oh, between scenes. Yes, it can be used from one as a transition from one to another, but it really depends on the action of the scene and what's happening in the scene. So yes, it can, but also it also depends on what the action is that's going on. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to watch this piece again, but what I've gone through is I've actually labeled the different shots that were used in the piece, and so let's see if you identified some of them in the same capacity.
Today, you will learn how to plant a pineapple. First, find a pineapple and twist the crown off. Let it dry for 4 days. Pull the weeds and clear the land. After that, grab a shovel and dig a hole about 1 foot deep and 1 foot wide. Put some compost and manure into the hole. These will nourish the pineapple without chemicals or pesticides. Pull its bottom leaves off to expose the rootstock. Then use your trowel to dig a small hole and place the crown in. After planting, you'll have to water it. It will need daily watering in the first few weeks. About 18 months later, you can enjoy the sweet and juicy pineapple you planted yourself. This is Jonah Chu from Lanai High and Elementary School, reporting for Hikino.
Yeah, and I really wanted to share that particular piece with you because I actually went over to mentor them when they were filming this, and help them with some of their angles and figuring out what they wanted to do. And that's an example of, when people see it, they're often amazed, like, wow, you guys really have to film a lot of angles and different types of shots to make it work. And I said, yes, because that really helps, bring that to life, especially because it's a very basic action of, digging a hole and putting in the crown and growing it, but was kept up, and it was made a lot more interesting and engaging by the various angles that they were cutting to, and also to get through time, because it's a very short piece. It's only about a minute long or so, and you can't actually show all of that in real time. So it was a good way to also condense and compress the action by having those various angles to work with. Now, when we filmed that particular how to plant a pineapple, we actually filmed pretty much all the entire action from start to finish from many of the various angles. So we always had a wide shot that covered off all the activity that was going on, various medium shots that were covering off the various sections of planting that pineapple, as well as different close-ups as well. We didn't actually use everything in the final edit, believe it or not, but because we had those various shots that we could use, the editor had a lot of different options and was able to move through the sequence of events very quickly and the different steps. Okay, I'm going to actually just play that one more time so you have a chance to just analyze it really quickly. So give me 1 second, because this is actually a really good example of how these angles are shot and used to put together a sequence. Oh, sorry.
Today, you will learn how to plant a pineapple. First, find a pineapple and twist the crown off. Let it dry for 4 days. Pull the weeds and clear the land. After that, grab a shovel and dig a hole about 1 foot deep and 1 foot wide. Put some compost and manure into the hole. These will nourish the pineapple without chemicals or pesticides. Pull its bottom leaves off to expose the rootstock. Then use your trowel to dig a small hole and place the crown in. After planting, you'll have to water it. It will need daily watering in the first few weeks. About 18 months later, you can enjoy the sweet and juicy pineapple you planted yourself. This is Jonah Chu from the Nutty High and Elementary School, reporting for Hikino.
Okay, just wanted to share that with you again. I had some built-in questions, so feel free at any time to ask some questions in the Q&A in the chat. Here we go, anonymous attendee. Do you have any tips on how to make a slower, boring story interesting with B-roll? Yes, I do, actually. Very, very good. I'm curious as to why this is a boring story, but one thing you can definitely do is you can actually take, for example, any activity that you're doing, and honestly, like even this activity of planting a pineapple or baking a cake, in its nature isn't the most exciting thing that you can show, but because we have the variety of those angles that we're cutting between, it adds interest and engagement to it. So for example, if you were to cover the same scene, with at least 5 of those basic camera angles, maybe wide shot, medium shot, and a few close-ups, and maybe an alternate or interesting angle, by cutting through those different scenes and having those different angles, you can actually make a scene that's maybe a little slower, not as interesting, more interesting, because you can cut in and focus on the details. Like if somebody's baking a cake, right? You're pouring in ingredients. If you just stay on a wide shot of somebody pouring ingredients and mixing them in a bowl, not very interesting. But if you start out, with cutting to various close-ups and different angles of pouring, mixing, back to a person's face as they look intently on stirring what's in the bowl, back to what's in the bowl as you're mixing, detail shot close-up of, some things falling into the bowl. I mean, that makes something just like that way more interesting. So that is definitely the essence of of how to make a scene more interesting, getting those 5 basic angles and going between them in the edit. Did that answer your question? Oh, okay. When you're making a story, should there be all of the angles in a minute-long story, or should there only be a few angles? You know, I usually have the students do at the minimum of 5 angles. And a few of the other teachers that I work with have done the same thing. And the reason for that is, you know, if you, like I said, if you only shoot wide shots and you try to string all these wide shots together, that actually will not work. If you only shoot close-ups, that could work, but you may run into trouble where the audience, you know, if you're all you're showing are close-ups, 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 close-ups of a particular activity, the audience may not have any understanding of where you are. They can't see the kitchen, like if you're doing a baking sequence, or they can't see you're in a home kitchen, you know, which is very important to the story. So by having these various shots, wide shot, medium shot, close up, you know, you're able to really help tell the story, you know, show where you are and what you're doing. So I would always say, yes, in a minute-long story, you should always get those angles. At least the wide shot, medium shot, close up, and then some sort of interesting angle. And when I say close up, I also would recommend highly, whatever close-ups you're shooting, one of the close-ups should always be the person's face. Always shoot the person's face. You can always edit to that. And if they're doing an activity with their hands, always shoot a close-up of their hands. You can never go wrong with those two types of shots in any sequence. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, good, very good questions, you guys. Very good questions. Okay, now I'm going to jump into something a little bit more advanced. Oh, wait, I see something else. Okay, I'm a middle school leadership video production class at my school. Your slideshow would be a great way for me to teach to my own students. Is there any chance to get a copy? I guess, so my show is on, slideshows on the Hikino Google Classroom. Robert, do you want to,
Yeah, I think it's going to be posted on the STN site as well. There'll be a link to Ryan's presentation.
Yeah, after convention closes, after a couple of weeks, all the presentations will actually be available on the STN website.
Yeah, but there are also a lot of resources on the Hikino website. I can type that into the chat bar for everyone.
Yep, and those are really, really great resources, you know, to help all of you out as you do your stories. Okay, so now this is a little bit more advanced, but I thought I would go over this today because there is a rule that we should take a look at when we are filming B-roll, and this applies, you know, in this particular example, I'm using 2 people talking to each other. And this rule is called the 180-degree rule. And you're like, well, why do we even have a rule like this? Well, here's why. And this, it all comes down to visual perception and editing. So let's take a look down here at camera 1, or the position of camera 1. And here you see a person in a blue shirt and the person in this purple shirt here talking. So this would be sort of your it's more of a medium shot, or let's just call this a medium to medium wide shot here that you have over here, 2 people talking. So if your camera is here, okay, what you have to do is, if you decide that this will be your widest shot, and this could actually, you could actually see feet here too. So let's say this was your widest shot. Now any of the other corresponding angles, closer shots or whatnot, have to be on this side of this imaginary line here. So you see this you draw an imaginary line right down the middle of the 2 people. Okay, so this is your first establishing shot here. So your second angle could go, you know, over here basically. So you would get a over the shoulder shot on, you know, person in the purple shirt. You could put your third camera position over here to get a shot of the person in the blue shirt. Okay. But what you can't do is, once if this is going to be, your main position here, you can't jump this imaginary line and put a camera here. And the reason for that is it will create a very jarring effect when you're trying to edit these angles together. So all your angles should be on this imaginary side of the line here. Okay, so this is just a guideline. Now there is a way to break this rule, but being that this is sort of a basic class or session on B-roll, I don't want to confuse you guys. So this is just a tip when you're starting out, don't jump the line. So even if you do an unusual angle or whatnot, my recommendation is to do it from somewhere, on this side of the line over here. Okay, so this is something that will throw people off in editing, if you jump this line and put like the fourth camera here and try to edit this into the mix of 1, 2, and 3, it actually will be very confusing to the viewer. So now, let's say you don't have two people. Let's say instead of this person in the purple shirt, this is sort of like the cake that this person is frosting. Let's say this is the person in the blue shirt's a baker. The person in the purple shirt is the cake. You would still apply the same rule, where if this person is mixing the cake here, you still wouldn't want to jump the line as well. Or if the person in the blue shirt was typing on a computer and the person in this purple shirt is actually a computer, same thing. You wouldn't want to jump the line and shoot them typing on the computer from the opposite side if these are your angles on this side. Okay. So that is just a short tip on this 180-degree rule. Okay, now one thing that would be great that I would like you guys to do at some point, and you of course can do this on your own time, is it's a basic activity. You can do this in your house at any time, basically. And what I'd like you to do is just create a basic sequence, and what would the action for this sequence would be, a person pours a glass of water from a water pitcher and then drinks the water. Okay, it's very simple, but what I'd like you guys to do with this is try to use a wide shot, a medium shot, a close-up. You can even do an extreme close-up, a reverse close-up, and an alternate angle of your choice. Something from those 5 banks of shots, basically. And then I'd like you to see if you could edit it together and put together a sequence. And you're kind of like, whoa, that's so easy. Well, a little harder than you think if you try to put this all together. And it's a very simple action. What you want to do is you want to film this person from all these different angles and have them do the same action over and over and over and over again, but from the different camera positions and different angles of shots. And then put them together and see how you want to cut it together, because then you realize, oh, you could start off with a close-up and then cut to a wide shot and then cut to a medium shot of this person pouring a glass of water from a pitcher and then drinking from the water. But what I have done here is, so these are the, use a minimum of 5 shots from this list: wide shot, medium shot, close-up, extreme close-up, reverse angle, alternate or unusual angle. But what I've done is I've just, in the essence of time, I've actually just done my own sequence. So I'm just going to show you what I did. But what I'd like you guys to do, if you have time, is just go ahead and do your own sequence based on these 5 shots in this action, and see what you come up with, because this is not the only way that you can do it. And you'll learn that, oh, I could have done it, like probably edited it together like 10 different ways, because I've had all these different angles. So, oh, a couple of tips before I show you my thing. Shoot at least 5 angles per the scene and follow that 180-degree rule that I just talked about earlier. I mentioned, remember to repeat the action. One thing that's very important when you're doing this particular scene is to watch for continuity. when you're putting it together and when you're filming. And that's actually why I used water in a glass, because if you were to refilm the scene, you have to make sure the water level in the picture is at the same point again when you reshoot it in a different angle. Likewise, when you're pouring it into the glass, that's continuity. You can actually shoot more shots than 5 angles. You know, an editor friend of mine who's professional always tells me, hey, you can't edit what you didn't shoot. So if you didn't shoot it, you can't edit it. So always remember that. It's okay to shoot more angles. Okay. Also, one thing to remember too, when you're filming B-roll, you want to get, you know, a pad. You want to have pad before and after the shot. I try to tell people to, you know, in one scene, try to get, you know, like at least 8 seconds of a clean shot stable as well too, you know. So in other words, hit record, back away, let the scene happen, and then hit stop. Don't hit record as the scene is beginning, and don't cut the camera as right before the scene ends. In other words. Okay, so here's just my example that I can show you. So that was a short example. I enlisted my wife to help me with that at home one day during the pandemic. So let me just go through that one more time so you can see what was done. And one of the other things I used is, because I had the variety of those angles, is I was able to time compress the action of drinking the water, because, you know, within our particular story, you may not have the time to show somebody drinking an entire glass of water even after they've poured it. So watch how I sort of use the action of drinking and cutting to the various angles to kind of time compress that as well. And there is some time compression going on right there. Okay, so that is my sequence of drinking the water. Okay, here are some common issues that students fall into a lot of times when capturing B-roll. Not shooting enough close-ups is a really common one. A lot of times I'll see things, you know, when I work with the students, and it's like everything's wide shots, which are really hard to put together and sometimes not at all that interesting. Or vice versa, a lot of close-ups and no wide shot, so you don't have any context as to where the scene is happening. And the other one is not enough of an angle change leading to a jump cut. What does that mean? Well, they only shoot medium shots or wide shots, and they're all pretty much shot from the same point. So when you try to edit them together, it's like, whoa, jumpy, because they're way too similar in framing, composition, and size. You know, instead of cutting from this to something like that, you know, everything's like this. So the person's like bouncing around on screen like this when we're editing from shot 1, shot 2, you know, where it's instead of shot 1, shot 2. Another important one, screen direction issues. This happens sometimes where you break the 180 rule. So let's say somebody is, you know, turned this way, and so I'm just one person, and I'm talking in my story to maybe a computer screen, okay, and then you try to edit to a closer shot of me, but you have jumped the 180 rule. So this is my medium shot of me, and then they have flipped it around, and this is the close-up of me. So it's really a jarring edit to go from that to that, instead of going from something like this to something like that. So those are screen direction issues, which relate to that 180 rule that I described. Also, continuity issues, like I talked about. Let's say that we saw the pitcher of water, and let's say in one shot, the pitcher of water was all the way full. And then when you cut to it in the person's hand when they were pouring it, there was hardly any water inside. So that's a continuity issue, right? You forgot to fill the pitcher up with water for the next shot. Okay, we have just about 5 minutes left, so I wanted to leave more time for questions. Any additional questions for the session? Can be about anything at all. I know we jump through this thing really quickly. Just checking the Q&A.
Give people a chance to type it in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, I think something just came in.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you elaborate more on jumping shots? I think they probably mean jump cuts. Wait, jump cuts? Do you mean? Sorry, quite. Do you mean jumping? Jump cuts. Oh, jump cuts. Okay. Well, there are two different types of. Okay, so you see this often in. So a jump cut is, a shot that is very, very jarring, and you can generally see that there's a definite jump in continuity or framing. So you see this a lot in YouTube. Unfortunately, on a lot of YouTube vlogs. That's like sort of my easiest example. So let's say I'm talking to you right now, and I'm saying, "Hi, my name is Ryan Kawamoto," and then there's an edit, and then all of a sudden I go from this angle, and then I shift, and I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii. So you see how it jumps? Hi, my name is Ryan Kawamoto, and then edit, and I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii. But you see, because it's a medium shot to a medium shot, and the framing is very similar. I just shifted just ever so slightly. It's going to look really, really jumpy in the edit. Versus, if this is my first shot, hi, my name is Ryan Kawamoto, edit. And I'm just approximating this on Zoom. I come in a little closer to a closer shot. Okay. And I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii. So you go from a medium shot to a close-up, a lot better than jumping around from a medium shot like this, and then I just shift slightly to a medium shot like that. If you edit those two together, you'll see that jump. Right? So that's why you want to change the angle and shoot those alternate angles.
Yeah, if I could just jump in for a second. I think a very common jump cut would be when you're interviewing somebody and it's in one shot and you take out a section of their sentence and you're deleting that, the shot will definitely jump, right? Because they're talking in the same shot and suddenly their head's going to go like that. Yeah. So what you're doing is you're taking out pieces of time. You're jumping forward in time without giving us a different angle. And that's jarring to an audience. If you want to jump ahead in time, you really want to change your angle.
So this is where B-roll really helps you out when you're putting together a story, because as you guys know, you do have to cut those interviews together, and you'll see that jump in between. Oh, I see another question here. Okay, is it difficult to get many types of shots, wide, medium, tight, while trying to keep continuity only if you have one camera? Yes, continuity is very, very difficult. But generally though, even in the professional world, a lot of times we only do single camera shoots. Most news stories are shot with one camera. Most commercials are shot with one camera. A lot of times the films that I've worked on, we only have one camera. Sometimes we have two if we're lucky and the budget can afford it, but a lot of times it's a single camera shoot. And so when you are doing a particular action and having somebody repeat the same action, you do have to pay very close attention to continuity. The water pitcher was just one example, but it's even something such as, like, let's say somebody is writing with a pen, you know, make sure that, well, I mean, most people are right-handed or left-handed, but make sure that if they're holding something in one hand or the other, if they're repeating the same action, that it's still in the correct hand, you know. If they're writing something on paper, is the paper all scribbled up, or is it at this about the same point in time where, you know, they're writing the letter, you know? So yes, you have to pay attention to that. Usually there's somebody who's writing those things down. Okay, when you start a story, should you start with straight with a voiceover and a B-roll, or an interview? Oh, that is a good question. I don't know, Robert, what do you prefer for that one? I have my personal opinion on that, but.
Yeah, well, I guess it just depends. You know, our first rule at Hikino is engage the audience within the first 5 seconds. So I think what in your particular story, whatever is going to hook the audience in. So it could be a little bit of an interview. You don't want to give away the whole story in the beginning. So it could be a piece of an interview that really makes the audience curious, makes them want to continue hearing what's going to happen. I think thinking of a Hikino story where it starts off with an interview with the vice principal, and she says, I was talking to a student the other day, and the student told me, you know, last semester, vice principal, I really hated you. Now that I thought would really draw an audience in, because what would cause a kid to tell his vice principal that he hates her? So that was a case where opening up with a soundbite really pulled me in. But it could also be just something, a short piece of action that pertains to your story but doesn't really explain it, that hooks them in, like, you know, story of an athlete, maybe starting off with them tying a close-up of tying their shoes, or getting their uniform on, something that pulls you into the activity and makes you curious about it. So I hope that makes sense. So it kind of just depends, you know. Just the best rule of thumb is ask yourself, or show other people, does this first shot pull you in? Does it make you want to see more? Or, you know, or does it tell me, this is going to be really boring, I'm not going to watch anymore?
Yep, always want to grab them. Oh, one more question, and I think this session's almost done, so I do want to answer it. Does the rule of 180 apply to your whole story, or only when you're shooting in one specific place? Like if you move somewhere like a park to a house, should you stay on the same side? Yeah, so it doesn't apply. The rule of 180, or the 180 rule, only applies within the context of that same scene that you're shooting. So if you're jumping to another scene, you obviously can apply a new 180-degree rule in the context of that particular room, scene, or location. And the reason why it's okay is, you know, generally when you edit from one particular scene, so let's say scene A is me, you know, getting ready to go for a run, and I'm inside my house, so I'm putting on my exercise clothes, and let's say the next scene is me running down the street. You know, you'll probably edit in either a close-up or a wide shot, or a shot in between, to establish that, oh, now this person is outside. And at that point, it's okay. You can now reestablish the rule for your next scene. So you can totally jump it when you're going, you know, from scene to scene. So it's only for within the context of that one scene.
All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I want to thank Ryan and Robert for joining us and giving us some amazing information about shooting a sequence. And I want to thank everyone for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day. We hope to see you tonight at the Broadcast Excellence Awards, and tomorrow at our sessions then. Have a good rest of your day.
Aloha. Mahalo for watching.